the format of this video will be a little bit different. Similar to the previous video, I will read the documents. I will interject when I feel it is needed to give you some context. But after I read the documents, I will give you some theories that I have. So the first part of this video is going to be 100% factual, and the second part is going to be conjecture. This is about MK Ultra. Project MK Ultra, also called the CIA Mind Control Program, is the code name given to a program of experiments on human subjects that were designed and undertaken by the CIA, and which were, at times, illegal. Experiments on humans were intended to identify and develop drugs and procedures to be used in interrogations in order to weaken the individual and force confessions through mind control. The project was organized through the Office of Scientific Intelligence of the CIA and coordinated with the U.S. Army Biological Warfare Laboratories. The operation was officially sanctioned in 1953, was reduced in scope in 1964, further curtailed in 1967, and recorded to be halted in 1973. And that's where I will get into some conjecture after I finish reading the documents. The program engaged in many illegal activities, including the use of U.S. and Canadian citizens as its unwitting test subjects, which led to controversy regarding its legitimacy. MK Ultra used numerous methods to manipulate people's mental states and alter brain functions, including the administration of drugs, especially LSD and other chemicals, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. This is the same CIA that we are supposed to believe, kiss their ass, and say that they are a legitimate source. Just listen to the mainstream media. The scope of Project MK Ultra was broad, with research undertaken at 80 institutions, including colleges and universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. The CIA operated through these institutions using front organizations, although sometimes top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA involvement. Project MK Ultra was first brought to public attention in 1975 by the Church Committee of the U.S. Congress and Gerald Ford's United States President's Commission on CIA Activities within the United States. Investigative efforts were hampered by the fact that CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MK Ultra files to be destroyed in 1973. The Church Committee, and Frank Church is the one who was the leader of this Senate committee, and the Rockefeller Commission investigations relied on the sworn testimony of direct participants and on the relatively small number of documents that survived Helms' destruction order. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request uncovered a trove of 20,000 documents referring to MK Ultra, which led to Senate hearings later that year. Some surviving information regarding MK Ultra was declassified in July 2001. In December 2018, declassified documents included a letter to an unidentified doctor discussing work on 6 dogs made to run, turn, and stop VI remote control and brain implants. Now here's the background on MK Ultra. MK meaning that the project was sponsored by the agency's technical service staff, followed by the word Ultra, which had previously been used to designate the most secret classification of World War II intelligence. The project was headed by Sidney Gottlieb, but began on the order of CIA Director Allen Dulles on April 13, 1953. And if you read a little bit about the Dulles brothers, they were some corrupt pieces of shit. Its aim was to develop mind control drugs for use against the Soviet bloc, in response to alleged Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean use of mind control techniques on U.S. prisoners of war during the Korean War. The CIA wanted to use similar methods on their own captives and was interested in manipulating foreign leaders with such techniques. It often conducted experiments without the subject's knowledge or consent. In some cases, academic researches were funded through the grants from the CIA front organizations, but were unaware that the CIA was using their work for these purposes. The project attempted to produce a perfect truth drug for interrogating suspected Soviet spies during the Cold War and to explore other possibilities of mind control. Subproject 54 was the Navy's top-secret perfect concussion program, which was supposed to have blast to erase memory. The program was never carried out since most of the documents were destroyed in 1973. It has been difficult for investigators to gain a complete understanding of the more than 150 funded research subprojects sponsored by MKUltra and related CIA programs. One 1955 MKUltra document gives an indication of the size and range of the effort. It refers to the study of an assortment of mind-altering substances, described as follows. 1. Substances which will promote illogical thinking and impulsiveness to the point where the recipient would be discredited in public. 2. Substances which increase the efficiency of a perception. 3. Materials which will cause the victim to age faster and slower in maternity. 4. Materials which will promote the intoxication effect of alcohol. 5. Materials which will produce the signs and symptoms of a recorded disease in a reversible way. 6. Materials which will cause temporary/permanent brain damage and loss of memory. 7. Substances which will enhance the ability of individuals to withstand torture and coercion during interrogation and so-called brainwashing. 8. Materials and physical methods which will produce amnesia for events preceding and during their use. 9. Physical methods of producing shock and confusion over extended periods of time and capable of use. 10. Substances which produce physical disablement such as paralysis of the legs, acute, etc. 11. Substances which will produce a chemical that can cause blisters. 12. Substances which will alter personality structures in such a way the tendency of the recipient to become dependent upon another person is enhanced. And there is a theory, I will interject for a minute, that certain individuals are people's MKUltra handlers. If you look at a lot of successful head coaches like Bill Belichick for the Patriots, you look at Coach K for Duke, Mike Krzyzewski is his name, you look at Popovich, they all have intelligence backgrounds. They all have worked in the military. So there is a theory that they know mind control techniques and they are handlers of certain players, spouses, so on and so forth. But again, that is just conjecture. A lot of these documents were obliterated under the order of Richard Helms in 1973. 13, a material which will cause mental confusion of such a type, the individual under its influence will find it difficult to maintain a fabrication under questioning. 14. Substances which will lower the ambition and general working efficiency of man when administered in undetectable amounts. 15. Substances which promote weakness or distortion of the eyesight or hearing facilities, preferably without permanent effects. 16. A knockout pill which can be surreptitiously administered in drinks, food, cigarettes, etc., which will be safe to use provided at maximum of amnesia and be suitable for use by agent types on ad hoc basis. 17. A material which can be subsistently administered by the above rules, and which in very small amounts will make it impossible for a person to perform physical activity. The 1976 Church Committee report found that in the MK Ultra program, drugs were used primarily as an aid to interrogations, but MK Ultra materials were also used for harassment, discrediting, or disabling purposes. CIA documents suggest that they investigated chemical, biological, and radiology's methods of mind control as part of MK Ultra. They spent an estimated $10 million or more, roughly $87.5 million adjusted for inflation. So in today's money, it would be $87.5 million spent on these experiments, according to the Church Committee. Experiments. One project, MK Ultra, got underway in April 1953. Experiments included administering LSD to mental patients, sex workers, people who could not fight back, as one agent officer put it. In one case, they administered LSD to a mental patient in Kentucky for 174 days. They also administered LSD to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, other government agents, and members of the general public to study their reactions. LSD and other drugs were often administered without the subject's knowledge or informed consent. The aim of this was to find drugs which would bring out deep confessions, or wipe a subject's mind clean and program him or her as a robot agent. LSD was administered in brothels to people in normal settings to see how they would react, with and without their consent, etc. MK Ultra's researchers later dismissed LSD as too unpredictable in its results. They gave up on the notion that LSD was the secret that was going to unlock the universe, but it still had a place in the cloak and dagger arsenal. However, by 1962, the CIA and the Army developed a series of super hallucinogenics, such as the highly touted PZ, which was thought to hold greater promise as mind control weapon. This resulted the withdrawal of many academics and private researchers, and LSD research became less of a priority altogether. Another technique investigated was the barbiturate that acts as a servant nervous system depressant and a stimulant into the other. So basically what they wanted to do was administer a drug to people that would mess up their central nervous system, make them fall asleep, and then they would forget all about it. The person would begin babbling incoherently, and it was sometimes possible to ask questions and get useful answers. Declassified documents also indicated they studied hypnosis in the early 1950s. Frank Church, who led the committee, died from pancreatic tumor on January 12, 1984, at the age of 59. So we all know how that goes. Now that was the facts. It is difficult, but the only thing you can do is speculate because of the distortion of the documents. One of the theories is that people in high levels, like Hollywood, business, and politicians, are mind controlled. There are videos of Lil Wayne, videos of Kanye West, a video of Michael Jackson when he hears a sound similar to a Pavlov dog, reacting to it in a unnatural manner. So the theory is that if you want to get into Hollywood or you want to get into a high-level job, you have handlers. It could be your wife, whoever it is. And the theory to some people is that Jay-Z is Beyonce's handler, but that person basically can mind control you. Now that is all conjecture. We don't know if that's true. It is highly speculative. But the rest of the document is what we know. These were the documents that were not destroyed, and they were investigated by the Church Committee. Again, people worship this intelligence community. According to CNN and the corporate media, we're supposed to believe them that Russia hacked the election because they never lie. They are always right. They are always good.